Here are 5 samples of Spanish-related UFO events between 1967 and 1980. Each one wasn't long enough to be worth its own article and video. 1967. Spanish Air Force encountered UFO over Extremadura. On June 9, 1967, a Spanish Air Force Lockheed T-33 encountered an unidentified object over the province of Extremadura while flying at an altitude of 1,200 meters. Attempts to contact the object failed. In fact, when directly above or below the object, the plane's radios ceased to function and emitted nothing but static. The object alternately moved ahead of the jet, hovered as if waiting for it to catch up, then moved away again. The pilots notified their base at Talavera Jaws, and 2 faster planes were sent up from the base at Torrejon. According to one of Europe's leading researchers, Antonio Ribera, these aircraft also experienced the same radio interference when in the vicinity of the object, which once again performed similar maneuvers before disappearing vertically at fantastic speed. My take: an unknown aircraft in 1967 easily making a mockery of the Spanish Air Force jets, making maneuvers that conventional aircraft cannot make. Also, communications are disrupted while in proximity to the UFO. Sounds legitimate to me. 1968. UFO over Madrid eluded supersonic jet fighter bombers. On September 5, 1968, over Madrid, Spain, the following occurred. The Spanish Air Force said Friday an unidentified flying object eluded one of its supersonic jet fighter bombers as a rash of flying saucer reports spread from Latin America to Europe. The sighting of a bright object in the night sky Thursday over Madrid caused a monumental traffic jam and sent the US-built F-104 jet scrambling to find out what it was. An official Air Force announcement said the pilot climbed to an altitude of more than 50,000 feet and reported the object was still above him when he had to return to base for fuel. The pilot of another plane flying at 36,000 feet reported seeing the same object. Air Force radar screens tracked the UFO and said it was flying at 90,000 feet and moving slowly. Thousands of Spaniards jammed the streets of Madrid to get a look at the object, and traffic backed up for miles. One reporter, sent to the Madrid Astronomical Observatory for a look through its powerful telescope, said the object gave off a blinding light. A photo taken through the telescope revealed a triangular object, apparently solid on one side and translucent in some sections. The official Air Force announcement said it had no scientific explanation for the phenomenon, but theorized that the object might have been a meteorological balloon. The Madrid Weather Bureau said it had no lost balloons and offered the theory that the object was part of a space satellite returning to Earth. Could it have been a balloon? Jan Willemston, the amateur astronomer and former pilot who took the best photograph of the object, told me that the object's base consisted of 3 triangles with a common apex. The bases of the triangles forming a triangular periphery roughly equilateral. At the top apex he observed a rod-like extension with several transverse members, a detail confirmed by the pianist John Bingham, living near me at the time, through his reflector telescope. Jan Willemston said that the object was stationary in the field of view of his 4-inch refractor telescope for over 2 hours, an impossible feat for a balloon. The 1968 Madrid balloon managed to climb to a great altitude when pursued by the F-104 starfighter and then disappeared at great speed, according to the official Air Force report as well as the Daily Telegraph in London. No balloon can do that. Neither would the Air Force scramble a jet to chase an unidentified object unless they were reasonably certain it was not a balloon, although there have been instances when air defense centers have mistaken balloons for UFOs. My take: a weather balloon that the Air Force could not catch or keep up with. That's a pretty amazing weather balloon. A falling satellite that stayed in the sky in one spot for hours. How does that work? 1975. Military personnel observed 2 UFOs at Gunnery Range. On January 2, 1975, between 2300 and 2325 hours, 6 military personnel at the Air Force bombing and Gunnery Range at Los Bardenas Reales near the Zaragoza Air Base saw 2 unidentified objects, one of which apparently landed or hovered low over the ground for about 25 minutes. According to the official report, the principal witness, named Eluded, observed the second object through binoculars and described it as shaped like an inverted cup with white lights on the upper and lower parts and intermittent white and amber lights on the sides. He was unable to estimate the size precisely, but thought it was about that of a truck. When it took off, a powerful light on its underside illuminated the entire area. No sound could be heard. Spanish military authorities of the 3rd Air Force region appointed an investigating judge to inquire into the incident. The official explanation given at the time was that the soldiers reporting the landing had experienced an optical illusion. But the following year, the Air Ministry released some documents on the case which proved this explanation false. Concluded the Air Force. All the witnesses were questioned one by one and separately. No contradictions were found. All coincided exactly in their descriptions. From their reports could be established the fact that unidentified flying objects flew at a low altitude and low speed over the ground, then rapidly ascended and, gaining high speed, disappeared in an northwest direction. My take: what conventional aircraft could hover silently then take off at high speeds? Either the government has some pretty great secret aircraft, or we have something more here. Obviously this wasn't an optical illusion. Did the military know the truth and just explained it away? 1976. General Castro admits UFOs are extraterrestrial craft. In June 1976, General Castro Cavero, Divisional General commanding the air zone of the Canary Islands at the time, granted an interview with Lag Assorted del Norte, during which he announced that UFOs were taken extremely seriously at a high level. As a general, my opinion is the same as the Air Ministry, he said, but in my own personal capacity, as Carlos Castro Cavero, I have for some time held the view that UFOs are extraterrestrial craft. The general said that he had personally witnessed a UFO for more than an hour over the town of Sadaba, near Zaragoza. It was an extremely bright object, he recalled, which remained there stationary for that length of time and then shot off toward Ejido Los Caballeros, covering the distance of 20 kilometers in less than 2 seconds. No human device is capable of such a speed. General Castro revealed that the Spanish Air Ministry possessed about 20 cases that had been thoroughly investigated by experts and found to be completely unexplainable in conventional terms. He added that pilots had flown alongside UFOs in aircraft, but when they tried to close in, the objects moved off at speeds far higher than anything made by man. Many countries collaborated on research into the subject, he said, and when definite conclusions had been arrived at, it might then be possible to inform the world. My take: I bet these statements didn't make the evening news in the United States. I wonder if the general was in trouble with his superiors after this. 1980. 6 Spanish airliners reported sighting UFOs. On November 11, 1980, evening time, at least 6 Spanish airliners reported sighting UFOs. The airliners included Iberia flights 350 810, 1800, and 1831, Trans-Europa Flight 1474, and an air taxi flight en route from the Balearic Islands to Marseilles. In an interview with Senior Benitez, Comandante Ramos, one of the Iberia pilots, described his sighting. It was 6:40 p.m. We were flying at about 10,000 meters, and I think, if my memory serves me right, that we were in the vicinity of Mela. The second pilot was at the controls at the time when we were about 108 miles from the Barcelona VOR VHF Omnirange it appeared. At first, we took it for another plane. We saw a green light, and we thought it must be the green light carried by planes on the starboard wing. But this supposed plane was coming straight at us. The second pilot said, "Look, it was coming toward us at an angle of 230 degrees, almost on a collision course. It was like a sphere, or rather, like an enormous soap bubble. When I saw it, it was almost on a level with us and coming straight for our 727. I made an instant reflex movement. The second pilot had switched off the automatic pilot, and I pushed the controls forward and did a dive of 300 or 400 feet. The whole thing happened just in a minute or less. The sphere or soap bubble, colored a very bright green on its surface, crossed our course, and when we dived it made off toward the south. It was then that we saw it was emitting other lights. When it passed close to us, we also saw a second ball or whatever close to the big one, but much smaller in size. I asked Barcelona Flight Control if there was any other traffic in the area. They replied that there was only an English plane, Monarch Flight 148, bound for Alicante. Shortly after that, another plane came in on the radio. I think, if my memory is not at fault, that it was a Trans-Europa Flight 1474, and he also asked Barcelona if there was a green traffic on his flight route. Then I talked to the Trans-Europa plane and told him what had just happened to me. The crew of Iberia Flight 1831 sighted the UFO while their Boeing 727 was still on the ground. And when the captain signaled to it by flashing his landing lights, the object immediately went out and disappeared. Other witnesses at Barcelona Airport said that the UFO buzzed the runway and then shot up into the sky. Is there a logical explanation for these multiple witness sightings? As the pilots interviewed by Senior Benitez commented, "It is totally impossible for a machine that comes along in a horizontal flight, then changes course when one aircraft takes an evasive dive, then comes down and buzzes the runways at Barcelona Airport, and then turns off its light when another plane flashes light signals at it. It is totally impossible for a machine that does all these things to be anything else but controlled by some type of intelligence." My take. Here is a great incident. On the same night, different planes witnessed something very unusual that you cannot easily explain away. These craft maneuvered in ways we cannot replicate, and again with the radio troubles. What do you think? Resources. Summary from above. Top secret. Timothy Good, 1988.